The scorching July sun hung mercilessly over Riverside Park in Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania, transforming the usually pleasant community gathering space into what felt like an outdoor furnace. Heat waves shimmered off the asphalt pathways, and the air was thick with the mingled scents of cotton candy, hot dogs, and freshly cut grass. Despite the oppressive temperature, hundreds of families had descended upon the park for the town's highly anticipated annual Summer Safety Fair, an event that brought together local emergency services, healthcare providers, and community organizations for a day of education, entertainment, and small-town bonding. Officer Marcus Chen stood ramrod straight beside the Meadowbrook Police Department's K-9 demonstration booth, his navy blue uniform already dark with perspiration. Despite the industrial fans, someone had thoughtfully positioned nearby. At 34 years old, Marcus was a 12-year veteran of the force and had spent the last 5 years as one of the department's elite K-9 handlers. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his dark eyes constantly scanning the growing crowd with the practiced vigilance that came from years of police work. Beside him, sitting in perfect formation with military-grade discipline, was Rex, a magnificent German shepherd whose very presence commanded attention, and if Marcus was being honest, a fair amount of intimidation. Rex was a 5-year-old veteran of the K-9 unit, weighing in at a solid 75 pounds of pure muscle and trained instinct. His coat gleamed black and tan in the harsh sunlight, and his dark, intelligent eyes tracked every movement in the surrounding area with laser focus. His ears stood at attention, pivoting towards sounds with remarkable precision. This was a dog bred, raised, and trained for serious work: narcotics detection, suspect apprehension, search and rescue operations. Rex wasn't a pet. He was a professional, and it showed in every inch of his powerful frame. The booth itself had been decorated with educational posters showing the various roles of K-9 units in modern policing. Photographs of Rex and the department's other K-9 officers in action lined the display boards. Rex tracking a scent through dense forest, Rex sitting alert beside a car during a drug bust, Rex receiving a commendation medal from the mayor. A small table held informational brochures about the K-9 program, and a donation jar sat hopefully at the corner, collecting funds for the unit's ongoing training and veterinary care. Despite the impressive display and Marcus's best efforts to appear approachable, families kept a respectful and sometimes nervous distance from the booth. Children would point excitedly from 20 feet away, tugging on their parents' arms. "Look, Mommy, a police dog," they'd exclaim, but when invited to come closer, most would shake their heads and hide behind adult legs. Parents would smile apologetically, offering explanations. "She's a bit shy around big dogs," or "We're just looking today, thank you, officer." Marcus had grown accustomed to this reaction. Rex, for all his training and discipline, was undeniably intimidating. When he barked during demonstrations, a deep, powerful sound that seemed to come from the earth itself, even adults would take an involuntary step backward. The dog's focused intensity, so crucial for police work, read as aggressive or dangerous to those unfamiliar with working dogs. Marcus had learned to give his standard speech. "Rex is incredibly well trained. He only acts on command. He's perfectly safe around people, especially children, as long as everyone follows basic rules. No sudden movements, no running, always ask before petting." The morning had progressed with modest success. A few brave souls had ventured close enough to ask questions. Marcus had demonstrated some of Rex's basic commands: sit, stay, down, heel, and the crowd had applauded politely. A local news crew had stopped by earlier, getting footage for their evening community segment. 2 teenagers considering careers in law enforcement had peppered Marcus with questions about the K-9 Academy, and he'd enjoyed talking with them, seeing their genuine interest spark to life. But as the afternoon heat intensified and the fair hit its peak attendance, Marcus found himself growing weary of the same conversations, the same nervous glances, the same wide berth people gave his partner. He knew Rex sensed it too. The dog remained perfectly obedient, but Marcus could read the subtle signs, the occasional huff of breath, the way Rex's eyes would follow children playing in the distance, a barely perceptible slump in his shoulders that spoke of boredom. "Hang in there, buddy," Marcus murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Rex's ears, one of the few moments of casual affection the dog received during working hours. "Just a couple more hours, then we're off duty and you can chase your tennis ball until you collapse." Rex's tail gave a single thump of acknowledgement against the grass. The fairground around them pulsed with life and energy. The fire department's demonstration area roared with the sound of water cannons dousing a controlled fire. At the main stage, a local band played classic rock covers while people danced or swayed in whatever shade they could find. The health department's tent offered free blood pressure screenings, while the library's booth ran a used book sale. Children's laughter rang out from the inflatable bounce houses positioned at the far end of the park, and the sweet smell of funnel cake wafted through the air, making Marcus's stomach rumble despite the heat. It was a perfect snapshot of small-town America, community members coming together, supporting one another, celebrating the simple joys of summer. Marcus loved these events, even when they were exhausting. They reminded him why he'd become a police officer in the first place: to serve, to protect, to be a visible, approachable part of the community fabric. As he watched families stream past, Marcus had no idea that within the next hour, everything would change. He didn't know that Rex was about to do something that would shock him to his core, challenge everything he thought he knew about his partner, and create a moment so powerful that it would be shared millions of times across the country. He couldn't have predicted that a single, unprecedented act of canine intuition was about to transform not just one little girl's life, but the entire trajectory of his and Rex's career. The stage was set. The players were about to take their positions, and nobody, not Marcus, not the crowd, and certainly not the terrified 3-year-old girl who was at that very moment being reluctantly led toward the K9 booth by her desperate mother, had any idea what was coming. Sofia Rodriguez's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her daughter Emma's tiny fingers, feeling the familiar anxiety building in her chest as they navigated through the crowded fairground. The 32-year-old elementary school teacher had been dreading and anticipating this moment for weeks, ever since she'd first seen the advertisement for the summer safety fair posted on the community bulletin board at the local grocery store. When she noticed that the police K9 unit would be present, something inside her had clicked, a mixture of hope and determination that had been dormant for far too long. It had been 6 months. 6 long, heartbreaking months since the incident that had transformed her bubbly, fearless daughter into a child who couldn't walk past a house with a barking dog without dissolving into tears. Sofia could still see it all playing out in her mind with painful clarity, like a movie scene she couldn't stop rewatching. It had been a crisp January afternoon, and Sofia had taken 3-year-old Emma to visit their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, 3 houses down. Mrs. Patterson, a sweet 70-year-old widow, had always been kind to Emma, often having cookies ready when they visited. What Sofia hadn't known was that Mrs. Patterson's daughter had dropped off her Labrador retriever, Bruno, for the weekend while she went out of town. Bruno was a friendly dog, Mrs. Patterson had assured them, just enthusiastic. The moment they'd walked through the front door, Bruno had bounded toward them with the unbridled excitement typical of his breed. The dog hadn't meant any harm. Sofia knew that intellectually, had never blamed Mrs. Patterson or Bruno. But to a small child standing barely 3 feet tall, a 70-pound Labrador launching himself in greeting was absolutely terrifying. Bruno had jumped up, his massive paws landing on Emma's small chest, knocking her backward onto the hardwood floor. The impact had knocked the wind out of her, and Emma's screams had been piercing and primal. Sofia had scooped up her daughter immediately, and Mrs. Patterson had secured Bruno in another room, both women apologizing profusely while Emma sobbed inconsolably. The pediatrician confirmed Emma had only minor bruising, nothing serious physically. But the psychological impact had been devastating and immediate. From that day forward, Emma had developed an intense phobia of all dogs. It didn't matter if they were small Chihuahuas or massive Great Danes, friendly golden retrievers or well-behaved poodles. If it had 4 legs and barked, Emma wanted nothing to do with it. Walks around the neighborhood had become obstacle courses of avoidance. Sophia had to map out routes that steered clear of houses with dogs in yards. The park, once Emma's favorite place, had become anxiety-inducing because of the dog park located at its far edge. Birthday parties had become complicated when Sophia had to call ahead and ask if the host family had pets. A trip to the zoo had ended in tears when they'd rounded a corner and encountered the petting zoo area with its friendly farm dogs. Even animated movies featuring dogs as characters, movies Emma had once loved, now triggered fear responses. Sophia had watched with a breaking heart as her daughter's world shrank, becoming smaller and more limited with each passing week. The child psychologist they'd begun seeing, Dr. Michelle Torres, had been patient and knowledgeable. She'd explained that Emma's reaction was a form of post-traumatic stress, not uncommon in young children who'd had frightening encounters with animals. The good news, Dr. Torres had said during their 3rd session, is that children Emma's age are remarkably resilient. With proper exposure therapy and support, she can absolutely overcome this fear. But exposure therapy was proving far more difficult than Sophia had imagined. They'd tried everything Dr. Torres suggested. They'd looked at picture books of dogs together. Emma would tolerate that, but showed no interest. They'd watched gentle dog videos online. Emma would leave the room. They'd visited a friend who had an elderly, docile Cavalier King Charles Spaniel that barely moved. Emma had refused to enter the house. Sophia had felt increasingly helpless, watching her bright, adventurous daughter become ruled by fear. Emma, who had once declared she wanted to be a veterinarian and help all the animals, now said she never wanted to see an animal ever again. The joy had drained from her daughter's eyes, replaced by constant vigilance and anxiety. At preschool, Emma would panic if a classmate brought in a stuffed animal dog for show and tell. She'd started having nightmares several times a week, waking up crying about big scary doggies. Then 2 weeks ago, Sophia had attended a parent support group that Dr. Torres facilitated. Another mother whose son had overcome a similar fear had shared her breakthrough moment, encountering a police K-9 unit at a community event. Something about seeing how controlled and disciplined the dog was, how it only moved on command, that clicked for my son, the woman had explained. He realized that dogs could be predictable and safe when properly trained. It wasn't an instant cure, but it was the turning point we desperately needed. That testimony had planted a seed in Sophia's mind. She'd researched police K-9 units extensively, learning about their rigorous training, their discipline, their ability to differentiate between work mode and rest mode. These were dogs that performed precise tasks, that responded to exact commands, that embodied control and reliability. If Emma could see that, could witness a dog being completely safe and predictable, maybe, just maybe, it could help. When Sophia had mentioned the idea to Dr. Torres, the psychologist had been cautiously optimistic. It could work, she'd said. The key is not to force it. Let Emma observe from whatever distance feels safe to her. Don't push, don't pressure. Just let her see that dogs can be calm and controlled. So here they were, on this sweltering July afternoon, weaving through the crowd at the summer safety fair. Sophia had deliberately saved the K-9 booth for last, allowing Emma to enjoy the other attractions first: the face painting, the balloon animals, the fire truck with its shiny red paint and friendly firefighters who'd let Emma sit in the driver's seat and honk the horn. Emma had been happy, laughing, her face painted like a butterfly, completely unaware of her mother's ulterior motive. But now, as the K-9 booth came into view, Sophia felt Emma's entire body tense. Her daughter had spotted Rex from 50 feet away, and the transformation was instantaneous and heartbreaking. Emma's hand, which had been swinging freely in Sophia's grasp, suddenly clenched so tightly that Sophia could feel her daughter's fingernails digging into her palm. The little girl's breathing became rapid and shallow, her chest rising and falling quickly beneath her bright yellow sundress decorated with sunflowers. "No, Mama," Emma whispered, her voice already taking on that panicked quality Sophia knew too well. "No, no, no." "It's okay, sweetie," Sophia said, trying to keep her own voice calm and steady even as her heart hammered in her chest. "We're just going to just look from far away. The doggy is working with the nice police officer, see? He's just sitting there, very calm." But Emma was already pulling backward, trying to retreat, her blue eyes, so much like Sophia's own, growing wide with terror. Her breathing was becoming more labored, the telltale signs of a panic attack beginning to emerge. Other fairgoers were starting to notice, some glancing over with sympathy, others with curiosity. Sophia knelt down to Emma's level, cupping her daughter's face gently in both hands. "Baby, listen to me. Mama would never let anything hurt you. Never, we don't have to go close. We can stay right here if you want. But I want you to just try to look at that police doggy. He's very special, he helps people. He's a hero." Emma's lower lip trembled, and tears began pooling in her eyes, threatening to spill over onto her flushed cheeks. The butterfly face paint on her left cheek was already smudged from where she'd rubbed at it nervously. "Scary," she whimpered. "Big and scary." "I know it seems scary," Sophia said softly, her own eyes beginning to sting with frustrated tears. 6 months of this. 6 months of watching her baby suffer. 6 months of feeling powerless. But Mama's got you, I promise. Let's just walk a little bit closer. If you don't like it, we'll leave right away. Okay." Emma didn't respond with words, but she didn't pull away either. Sophia took that as permission to continue. Standing up, she kept hold of Emma's hand and began slowly, very slowly, moving toward the K9 booth. Each step felt monumental. She could feel Emma's resistance, the way her daughter's feet dragged slightly, the way her small body remained rigid with fear. They were 20 feet away now. Sophia could see the officer more clearly, a kind-looking Asian man in his 30s who was speaking with an elderly couple, gesturing proudly toward his K9 partner. The German shepherd sat perfectly still beside him, alert but calm, exactly the image of control and discipline Sophia had hoped for. 15 feet away, Emma's breathing was becoming more ragged. "Mama, please," she begged, her voice breaking. Sophia's resolve wavered. Was she pushing too hard? Was this the right thing to do? Dr. Torres had said not to force it, but how did you know the difference between gentle encouragement and harmful pressure? 10 feet away. The officer noticed them now, his eyes flickering toward the clearly distressed child. Sophia saw him register the situation, saw his expression shift to one of understanding and concern. And then, just as Sophia was about to give up, about to tell Emma they could leave, about to accept that today wasn't the day for breakthroughs, something happened that nobody, least of all Sofia Rodriguez, could have possibly predicted. "Rex, halt!" The command burst from Officer Marcus Chen's lips with instinctive authority, sharp and clear, honed by thousands of hours of training. But even as the words left his mouth, something deep in his gut, some indefinable instinct built over 5 years of partnership, told him to stop, to wait, to trust. His hand, which had been reaching for Rex's lead, froze in midair. Marcus had been a K9 handler long enough to recognize the difference between a dog acting out and a dog acting with purpose. This was purpose, every fiber of Rex's being radiated intentionality, and there was something in the German shepherd's eyes, something Marcus had never quite seen before, that made him hesitate. The entire fairground seemed to sense that something significant was happening. The ambient noise, the cheerful carnival music, the excited chatter of families, the distant sizzle of food vendors' grills, all of it faded into a muffled background hum. People within a 30-foot radius had stopped moving, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Heads turned. Parents pulled their own children closer, not out of fear exactly, but out of that universal human instinct to witness something important, something real, something unscripted happening right before their eyes. Marcus's mind was racing through protocols and procedures. Rex was technically off-leash during these demonstrations, which was standard for community engagement events. The dog had never, not once in 5 years, broken formation without a command. Rex was the epitome of discipline, the poster child for K9 excellence. The Meadowbrook Police Department had even used photos of Rex in their recruitment materials with the caption "Precision, Dedication, Excellence." But this wasn't protocol. This was something else entirely. Sofia Rodriguez's maternal instincts had gone into overdrive the moment Rex stood up. Every protective impulse in her body screamed danger. She saw 75 pounds of muscle and trained aggression moving toward her baby girl, and rational thought evaporated. Her free hand shot out instinctively, positioning herself between Emma and the approaching dog, even as her mind tried to process what was happening. "It's okay," she heard Marcus saying, his voice surprisingly calm but with an undertone of wonder. Just wait. Watch what he does." But how could she wait? How could any mother wait while a police dog, a dog trained to chase down criminals, to use its powerful jaws when necessary, approached her terrified 3-year-old daughter? Sofia's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it pounding in her ears. Emma had gone completely rigid against her legs, frozen in place like a small animal confronted by a predator. Phones materialized from pockets and purses as if summoned by collective consciousness. At least a dozen people had their devices out now, recording, sensing that whatever was unfolding needed to be captured. A teenager with a particularly good vantage point was already live streaming on social media, though she had no idea what she was streaming, just that something was happening and it felt important. Marcus watched Rex move with a kind of awe he'd never experienced in all his years of police work. The dog's gait had completely transformed. Gone was the alert, purposeful stride of a working K9. In its place was something slow, measured, almost gentle, a movement Marcus hadn't known Rex was capable of. The German Shepherd's head was lowered, not in submission, but in what could only be described as deference. His ears, normally pricked forward in attention, had softened. Even his tail, usually held high and proud, was in a neutral, non-threatening position. It was as if Rex had shed his police dog persona entirely and become something else, something softer, something aware of the fragile, frightened little being before him. The distance between Rex and Emma was closing with agonizing slowness. 6 feet, 5 feet. Sofia's grip on Emma tightened involuntarily. She could feel her daughter trembling, could feel the rapid, frightened breathing of her child through the thin fabric of her sundress. 4 feet, 3 feet. Emma's eyes, wide with terror, were locked on Rex. Tears had begun streaming down her face, cutting clean tracks through the butterfly face paint. Her mouth was open in a silent cry, as if she wanted to scream but couldn't find the breath. The last time she'd been this close to a large dog, she'd been knocked to the ground, had felt the impact of hard floor against her small back, had experienced that primal terror of being overwhelmed by something so much bigger than herself. Marcus could see it all playing out, the child's fear, the mother's protective panic, his own dog doing something unprecedented. His training told him to intervene, to call Rex back, to follow protocol. But something deeper, something that transcended his police training, told him to let this play out. Rex knew something. Rex sensed something. And in that moment, Marcus made the split-second decision to trust his partner's instincts over his own training manual. Rex stopped, exactly 4 feet from Emma, close enough to seem approachable, far enough to not overwhelm. The distance felt carefully calculated, as if the dog had measured it precisely. For a long moment, Rex simply stood there, his dark eyes fixed on the terrified child with an expression that could only be described as patient understanding. Then slowly, so slowly that every second felt stretched like taffy, Rex began to lower himself to the ground. His powerful front legs bent, his chest touched the grass, his rear quarters followed. It wasn't the crisp, military down position Marcus had trained him to execute. This was something entirely different. This was a dog making himself as small and non-threatening as physically possible. Rex settled his head onto his front paws, his body completely flat against the cool grass. From this position, the intimidating police dog looked almost vulnerable. His eyes, those keen, intelligent eyes that could spot a hidden suspect from 50 yards away, had transformed into something gentle. He looked up at Emma with what could only be described as compassion. The crowd held its collective breath. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The moment felt suspended in time, fragile as spun glass. Even the breeze seemed to have stilled, as if nature itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Marcus felt goosebumps rise on his arms despite the July heat. In 5 years of partnership, through drug busts and search and rescue operations, through training exercises and real-world emergencies, he had never seen Rex do anything remotely like this. The dog was communicating something, not to Marcus, not to the crowd, but to that terrified little girl standing 10 feet away. Rex's message was clear, written in every line of his prone body, every soft look from his patient eyes. "I'm not scary. I won't hurt you. Take your time. I'll wait. I'll wait as long as you need." Sophia felt her racing heart begin to slow just slightly. Her rational mind started catching up with her emotional response. The dog wasn't attacking. The dog wasn't even approaching anymore. The dog was waiting. She looked at Marcus, saw the expression of pure wonder on the officer's face, and felt the first flicker of something she hadn't felt in 6 months when it came to dogs and her daughter. Hoping. Emma's terrified sobs had quieted to irregular hiccups. Her tears still flowed, but something in her rigid posture had shifted microscopically. She was still afraid. That was written in every line of her small body, but the absolute panic had begun to recede, replaced by something else. Curiosity. The little girl was staring at Rex with an intensity that transcended her fear. She had never seen a dog behave like this. Every dog she encountered barked or jumped or moved toward her with enthusiasm that felt threatening. But this dog was perfectly still. This dog was flat on the ground, smaller than she was from this angle. This dog was waiting for her. The entire fairground had transformed into a theater, with dozens of spectators frozen in place, witnessing something none of them could quite put into words, but all of them recognized as significant. Parents instinctively held their own children closer. Dog lovers felt tears pricking their eyes without quite knowing why. Even people who claimed not to care much for animals found themselves leaning forward, unable to look away. The tension was palpable, electric, beautiful in its intensity. Everything hung in balance: a terrified child, a patient dog, a desperate mother, and a community holding its breath, waiting to see if something miraculous might happen on an ordinary July afternoon in a small Pennsylvania town. Time moved differently in that moment, stretching and warping like something from a dream. What was probably only 3 or 4 minutes felt like an eternity to everyone watching. The sun continued its slow arc across the sky, casting dappled shadows through the park's oak trees, but for the people gathered around the K9 booth, the world had narrowed to a single point of focus: a frightened little girl and the patient dog lying prostrate before her. Rex didn't move, not an inch, not a twitch. His muscles, trained for explosive action and split-second response, remained absolutely relaxed against the grass. His breathing was slow and even, his chest rising and falling in a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. But it was his eyes that told the real story. Those dark, intelligent eyes that had tracked criminals through darkness and located missing persons in dense forest were now fixed on Emma with an expression of such profound gentleness that it defied everything Marcus thought he knew about his partner. The German shepherd's gaze wasn't the intense, focused stare of a working dog. It was soft, almost sad, as if Rex could somehow sense the depth of Emma's fear and was trying to communicate that he understood, that he would never add to her pain. His ears remained in that relaxed position, neither alert nor flattened in aggression. Even his tail, which occasionally gave the smallest of movements, did so with careful deliberation, never enough to startle, just enough to signal friendliness. "He knows," Marcus whispered, more to himself than to anyone else, though Sophia caught the words. "I don't know how, but he knows exactly what she needs." Sophia's mind was a battlefield of conflicting impulses. Every protective instinct she possessed screamed at her to scoop Emma up and walk away, to end this experiment before something went wrong. But another part of her, the part that had been desperately seeking a solution for 6 months, the part that had watched her daughter's world shrink day by day, that part recognized something extraordinary was happening. She looked down at Emma and saw the change beginning. Her daughter's breathing, which had been rapid and panicked, was gradually slowing. The rigid tension in her small body was beginning to ease, almost imperceptibly. Emma's tears still flowed, leaving wet trails down her cheeks, but the violent sobbing had subsided into quiet sniffles. Most remarkably, Emma hadn't looked away from Rex. Not once. The crowd around them had swelled to nearly 50 people, all maintaining a respectful distance, but unable to tear themselves away from the scene. Mothers clutched their own children's hands. Fathers stood with arms crossed, expressions soft with emotion they weren't quite ready to name. Teenagers, who moments ago had been absorbed in their phones, now held those devices steady, recording every second, somehow understanding they were witnessing something that transcended the usual social media fodder. An elderly man in a Vietnam veteran's cap had tears streaming openly down his weathered face. He'd worked with military dogs overseas and knew the level of training, discipline, and intelligence required. What he was seeing now went beyond training. This was intuition, empathy, connection on a level he'd rarely witnessed even in his decades around working dogs. Marcus's radio crackled softly at his hip, probably dispatch checking in on the status of the demonstration, but he ignored it completely. Nothing else mattered right now. His entire career, every citation and commendation, every successful operation with Rex, suddenly felt like preparation for this single moment. He watched his partner with fresh eyes, seeing dimensions of Rex's character that had always been there, but that the demands of police work had never allowed to fully surface. Rex's patience seemed infinite. He didn't shift his weight, didn't sigh with boredom, didn't break his gentle gaze. It was as if the dog had decided that this little girl's healing was the most important mission he'd ever been assigned, and he would wait as long as necessary to see it through. 5 minutes became 6. 6 became 7. Emma's small fingers, which had been clutching her mother's leg with desperate intensity, gradually relaxed their grip. Sophia felt it happening and hardly dared to breathe, terrified that any movement on her part might shatter this fragile moment. Emma's blue eyes, still wet with tears, had changed. The raw panic had receded, replaced by something Sophia recognized from her teaching experience, the look of a child working through a problem, trying to reconcile what they believed with what they were observing. "Mama," Emma's voice was tiny, barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a bell. "Why doggy not moving?" Sophia's heart leaped. Emma had spoken. Not screamed, not cried for them to leave, but asked a question, an actual question about the dog. Sophia crouched down to Emma's level, careful to keep her voice calm and gentle. "The doggy is being very still because he wants to show you he's safe, baby. He's waiting for you. He won't move until you're ready." Emma processed this information with the serious concentration only a 3-year-old could muster. Her brow furrowed beneath her smudged butterfly face paint. "Doggy waiting for me." "Yes, sweetie, just for you." But doggies are scary. They jump and knock Emma down." Her voice trembled at the memory, and Sophia saw Rex's ears twitch ever so slightly, as if the dog had heard and understood the source of her fear. "Some doggies don't know how to be gentle," Sophia explained, choosing her words carefully. "But this doggy, his name is Rex, he knows. He's a very special doggy who helps people. He knows you were scared, so he's showing you he can be calm and quiet." Emma looked from her mother back to Rex, studying the prone dog with new interest. "Rex," she said softly, testing out the name. At the sound of his name from her lips, Rex's tail moved, just slightly, just a small wag, but enough to be noticeable. Emma gasped, but it wasn't the gasp of fear. It was the gasp of discovery. "Mama," his tail moved. "He's happy you said his name," Sophia replied, her own voice thick with emotion. Marcus, listening to this exchange, felt his throat tighten. He'd given countless demonstrations, explained Rex's capabilities to hundreds of people, received praise from commissioners and mayors. But nothing, absolutely nothing, in his career had prepared him for the profound beauty of watching his partner communicate across the barrier of species and trauma to reach a frightened child. Emma took one tiny step forward, just one. Her small sneaker, with its pink and white stripes, moved from behind her mother's leg to a few inches in front of it. It was barely measurable as progress, but everyone watching understood its significance. 50 people held their breath simultaneously. Rex, remarkably, seemed to make himself even smaller, as if consciously trying to appear less imposing. His head pressed a fraction lower into his paws, his body melted further into the grass. The message was clear. "I see your bravery. Keep going. I'm safe. I promise." Another step. Emma's breathing had normalized now, though her small hand still clutched her mother's fingers. 2 steps. 3. She was no longer behind Sophia but beside her, then slightly in front of her. Sophia moved with her daughter, maintaining contact but letting Emma lead, tears of pride and hope streaming down her own face. The distance was closing. 8 feet. 7. 6. Each step felt monumental, a victory over fear that had ruled Emma's life for half a year. The crowd, though silent, was radiating encouragement. Some people had their hands clasped as if in prayer. Others covered their mouths to stifle sobs. The teenager who'd been live-streaming was crying openly, her phone shaking slightly but still capturing every second. 5 feet. Emma stopped, standing fully in front of her mother now, no longer using Sophia as a shield. She studied Rex with that intense, unflinching gaze children possess when they're trying to understand something important. Rex gazed back, his entire being projecting peace and patience. He's really not scary," Emma said, more to herself than anyone else. It was a revelation spoken aloud, the beginning of truth replacing fear. "No, baby," Sophia confirmed, her voice breaking. "He's not scary at all." Emma looked back at her mother, seeking permission, seeking courage. Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then Emma did something that made Marcus's eyes sting with tears, something that would be replayed millions of times in the coming days. She took another step forward. 4 feet separated them now. 4 feet that might as well have been an ocean for how significant the distance felt. Emma stood there, her small chest rising and falling with measured breaths, her blue eyes locked on Rex with an intensity that seemed far too profound for someone so young. Her pink and white sneakers were planted firmly on the grass, her yellow sundress fluttering slightly in a breeze that had finally decided to offer mercy from the oppressive heat. Sophia remained perfectly still behind her daughter, one hand hovering inches from Emma's shoulder, close enough to intervene if necessary, far enough to let this moment belong to Emma alone. Silent tears continued streaming down Sophia's face, though she hardly noticed them. Her entire being was focused on her daughter, on this brave little girl who was facing down the monster that had haunted her for 6 months. Rex continued his vigil with the patience of a saint. His dark eyes remained soft and welcoming, tracking Emma's every tiny movement without any hint of predatory focus. The dog's breathing remained slow and even, creating a rhythm that seemed almost meditative. In all his years of service, the high-speed chases, the tense standoffs, the urgent search and rescue operations, Rex had never been on a more important mission than this one. Emma's right hand lifted slowly from her side. It was trembling, shaking like a leaf in a windstorm, but it lifted. Her small fingers curled and uncurled nervously as she processed what she was about to do. 6 months ago, The very thought of touching a dog would have sent her into hysterics. Even yesterday, even this morning, the idea would have been unthinkable. But something had shifted. Something in Rex's absolute stillness, in his patient waiting, in his gentle eyes had created a crack in the wall of fear Emma had built around herself. And now, standing here in the summer sunshine with dozens of strangers watching, that crack was widening into a doorway. "It's okay, baby," Sophia whispered, so quietly that only Emma could hear. "You're so brave, so brave." Emma's hand extended forward, moving through the air with agonizing slowness. 3 feet, 2 feet. Her fingers were less than a foot away from Rex's head now, and still the dog didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't adjust his position or show any sign of impatience. He simply waited, as if he had all the time in the world, as if nothing else existed except this moment and this frightened child who was choosing courage over fear. Marcus felt his own hand grip the edge of the display table behind him, knuckles white with tension. He'd stopped breathing without realizing it. His entire career, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd trained Rex to be, none of it compared to the importance of what was happening right now. He found himself silently praying to whatever higher power might be listening. Please, please let this work. Let this little girl find healing. Emma's fingertips made contact. It was the lightest touch imaginable, barely a whisper of skin against fur, contact so brief and tentative it might not even count as a true touch. But it happened. Emma's fingers grazed the top of Rex's head for a fraction of a second before jerking back as if she'd touched a hot stove. Rex didn't move, didn't react, didn't do anything except continue being the most patient, gentle creature in existence. Emma stared at her hand with wonder as if surprised it was still attached to her arm. She'd touched a dog, a big dog, a dog that looked scary, and nothing bad had happened. No jumping, no knocking her down, no overwhelming force, just soft fur and stillness. The crowd sensed the shift. A few people let out quiet gasps, others pressed hands to their hearts. The teenager live streaming whispered into her phone, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Emma's hand went out again, this time with slightly more confidence. Her palm made contact with Rex's head, pressing down gently, feeling the warmth of him, the solidness of him, the reality of him. Rex remained absolutely motionless, but Marcus could see his partner's eyes. They'd somehow gotten even softer, if that was possible, radiating pure gentleness. "Soft," Emma whispered, her voice filled with amazement. "Mama, he's soft." Sophia let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Yes, baby, he's very soft." Encouraged now, Emma's other hand joined the first. Both small palms were resting on Rex's head, stroking tentatively, exploring. Her face, which had been tight with fear just minutes ago, began to transform. The corners of her mouth lifted slightly. Her eyes widened with wonder rather than terror. The butterfly face paint on her cheeks crinkled as her expression changed. And then she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, not at first. Just a tiny upward curve of her lips, but it was genuine. It was joy. It was the smile of a child discovering something wonderful, something that challenged everything she'd believed about the world. Emma leaned forward slightly, her confidence growing with each passing second, her hands moving more freely through Rex's thick fur. "Nice doggy," Emma said softly, the words somewhat uncertain, as if she was testing out a concept that was brand new to her. "Nice Rex." At the sound of his name spoken with such sweetness, Rex's tail began to wag. Not frantically, not with the enthusiastic thumping that might startle, but with gentle, measured movements that sent ripples through the grass beneath him. Back and forth, a metronome of happiness. Emma gasped with delight. "Mama, look, his tail is wagging, he's happy." "He is happy, sweetie," Sophia confirmed, now openly crying tears of joy. "He's so happy you're being brave." The dam broke then. Emma's tentative smile spread into a full grin that lit up her entire face. She patted Rex's head more firmly, ran her fingers through his ears, traced the distinctive markings on his face. Each touch seemed to erase a little more of her fear, replacing it with curiosity, with wonder, with the pure, uncomplicated joy that children feel when they discover something magical. "He's not scary at all," Emma declared, her voice carrying across the silent crowd with crystal clarity. "He's nice. He's the nicest doggy in the whole world." Rex, with the impeccable timing that comes from deep intuition, chose that exact moment to slowly, very slowly, lift his head from his paws. Emma froze for just a second, but she didn't pull away. She watched as Rex raised himself up slightly, bringing his face closer to hers, moving with such deliberate gentleness that there could be no mistaking his intention. Then Rex did something that would be captured in a dozen videos from a dozen different angles, something that would be shared millions of times and bring tears to the eyes of people across the country. He extended his neck carefully and gave Emma's outstretched palm the gentlest, sweetest lick imaginable, barely a touch of his tongue against her skin, more a kiss than anything else. Emma's reaction was instantaneous and pure. She giggled, actually giggled, a sound Sophia hadn't heard her daughter make around a dog in half a year. The giggle bubbled up from somewhere deep inside, erupting into the summer air like birdsong, like music, like the sound of healing itself. "He kissed me," Emma squealed with delight, pulling her hand back to look at it, then immediately reaching out to pet Rex again. "He gave me a kiss, Mama. Rex kissed me." The crowd erupted. Applause broke out spontaneously, people clapping and cheering as if they'd witnessed a championship victory. Because in a way, they had. They'd witnessed a small child's victory over fear, a dog's remarkable intuition, and a moment of pure connection that transcended training and trauma. Sophia dropped to her knees beside Emma, wrapping her arms around her daughter from behind, tears flowing freely now. "You did it, baby. You were so brave. I'm so proud of you." But Emma barely heard her mother. She was too busy throwing her small arms around Rex's thick neck, pressing her face into his fur, hugging him with the fierce, wholehearted abandon that only a 3-year-old can muster. And Rex, this trained police dog, this professional K-9 officer, this working animal who'd apprehended criminals and saved lives, gently, carefully leaned into the embrace, accepting the little girl's love with a dignity and tenderness that took Marcus's breath away. In that moment, surrounded by cheering strangers, bathed in summer sunshine, something fundamental had shifted. Emma had faced her fear and found a friend. Sophia had watched her daughter reclaim a piece of her world. Marcus had discovered new depths to his partner's remarkable spirit. And Rex had done what he'd been born to do, though no training manual had ever taught it. He'd healed a broken heart. By the time Sophia and Emma left the fairground 2 hours later, with Emma chattering nonstop about her new friend Rex, something remarkable was already happening in the digital world. The moment that had unfolded in real space, witnessed by perhaps 50 people, was beginning its exponential journey through cyberspace, reaching far beyond the boundaries of Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania. Sarah Chen, the 17-year-old who'd been live-streaming the encounter, had watched her viewer count explode from the usual 12 friends to over 3,000 people in real time. Her hands had been shaking so badly by the end that the final footage was slightly blurry, but it didn't matter. She'd captured something pure, something real, something that people were desperately hungry to see. Within 10 minutes of the embrace, her comment section had erupted with reactions from strangers around the world. "I'm literally sobbing at work right now," wrote someone from Seattle. "This is the most beautiful thing I've seen in years," commented a user in London. "Faith in humanity equals restored," another person typed from Tokyo. Sarah's video had been shared 847 times before Emma and Sophia had even left the park. By dinner time on the East Coast, that number had climbed to over 50,000. The algorithm gods of social media had recognized something special: high engagement, positive sentiment, strong emotional response, long watch time, and began pushing the video to more and more feeds. But Sarah's wasn't the only video. At least 15 other people had recorded the encounter from various angles. Marcus's fellow officer, Jennifer Walsh, had captured the entire sequence from the side, getting perfect footage of Rex's patient waiting and Emma's tentative approach. An elderly woman had filmed from behind, showing the crowd's rapt attention and Sophia's emotional journey. A father had recorded from a high angle, giving a bird's-eye view that showed the remarkable body language of both dog and child. By 8 o'clock that evening, multiple versions of the video were circulating across every major platform: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. The story was everywhere, each platform's users adding their own commentary, their own reactions, their own shares. The hashtags Rex the Hero, Police Dog Healer, and Brave Emma began trending simultaneously. Marcus had just sat down to dinner with his wife, Rachel, when his phone started buzzing incessantly. Text messages, emails, friend requests, tag notifications. They flooded in so rapidly that his phone's screen couldn't keep up. Rachel, a high school English teacher, picked up her own device and gasped. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, turning her tablet toward him. "You and Rex are everywhere." She showed him a Twitter thread with over 100,000 likes. The caption read, "This police K9's incredible intuition helped a traumatized child overcome her fear of dogs. This is what compassion looks like." Below it, someone had strung together clips from multiple angles, creating a comprehensive view of the encounter set to gentle piano music. Marcus watched himself in the video, saw the wonder on his own face as Rex had approached Emma. He saw angles he hadn't been able to see in person: Emma's mother's tears, the crowd's emotional reactions, the way Rex had seemed to calculate every movement with Emma's comfort in mind. Watching it from this perspective, removed from the immediate emotion of the moment, Marcus felt his throat tighten all over again. "It's already been picked up by news outlets," Rachel continued, scrolling rapidly. "Look, Good Morning America shared it, so did CNN. The Washington Post is writing an article. Marcus, this is huge." By 9 o'clock, Marcus's phone was ringing with calls from media outlets. A producer from the Today Show wanted to know if he and Rex would be available for an interview. A reporter from People magazine was writing a feature story. Local Philadelphia news stations were requesting immediate segments. A major pet food company had already contacted the police department about Rex potentially becoming a brand ambassador. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, his dinner growing cold, watching the story spiral into something far bigger than he'd imagined. Rex, seemingly oblivious to his newfound internet fame, lay on his dog bed in the corner, contentedly chewing a rope toy. Meanwhile, in their small apartment across town, Sophia was experiencing her own version of the digital storm. Emma had finally fallen asleep after an exhausting but joyful evening. The first night in 6 months she'd gone to bed without mentioning nightmares about scary dogs. Sophia had been scrolling through her Facebook feed when she saw it, video after video of her daughter, of that transformative moment. Her phone rang. It was her sister in California. "Sophia, you and Emma are everywhere. I just saw the video on 3 different platforms." Then her mother called from Florida. Then her best friend from college. Then people she hadn't spoken to in years, all reaching out, all having seen the videos, all wanting to share in the joy of Emma's breakthrough. Sophia found herself reading comments from thousands of strangers, all invested in her daughter's story. Parents shared their own children's fears and struggles. Dog trainers praised Rex's intuition. Psychologists discussed the therapeutic potential of trained animals. Military veterans talked about the intelligence and sensitivity of working dogs. The comment sections had become communities of people connecting over shared experiences and emotions. One comment in particular made Sophia cry all over again. It was from a woman in Oregon. "My son had a similar fear after being bitten by a dog. We tried everything. Watching your daughter's courage gave me hope that he can overcome this too. Thank you for sharing this moment, even though you didn't know it was being filmed. You've helped more people than you'll ever know." By midnight Eastern Time, the videos had collectively been viewed over 5 million times. Major news networks had prepared segments for their morning shows. The Meadowbrook Police Department's phone lines had been overwhelmed with calls. The town's mayor had already scheduled a press conference for the following day. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from Dr. Michelle Torres, Emma's psychologist, who texted Sophia at 11:47 p.m. "I just saw the videos. What happened today was extraordinary. Rex did in 10 minutes what sometimes takes months of therapy to achieve. This is a genuine breakthrough. I'm so happy for Emma and so proud of her courage." International outlets picked up the story overnight. By the time the sun rose on the next day, the police dog who understood had become a global phenomenon. The BBC featured it in their Feel Good News segment. A popular Australian morning show dedicated 15 minutes to discussing it. Japanese news programs analyzed Rex's training and behavior. The story transcended language barriers because the emotions it captured were universal: fear, compassion, courage, connection. Social media psychology experts weighed in on why the video had resonated so powerfully. In a world often dominated by negative news, divisive politics, and social conflict, this was a story of pure goodness. It showed intuition and empathy from an unexpected source. It demonstrated that healing could come from the most surprising places. It reminded people that sometimes the solutions to our deepest fears required patience, understanding, and the willingness to wait for someone to be ready. Parenting blogs wrote think pieces about exposure therapy and childhood fears. Dog training websites analyzed Rex's body language frame by frame. Psychology Today published an article titled, "What a Police Dog Taught Us About Trauma Recovery." The video had become more than just viral content. It had become a cultural touchstone, a shared moment of beauty in a world that desperately needed it. By the end of the first 24 hours, the combined videos had been viewed over 20 million times across all platforms. The story had been covered by more than 200 news outlets worldwide. Rex the Hero was the #1 trending topic in the United States and had reached trending status in 12 other countries. But amid all the statistics and metrics and viral success, the heart of the story remained simple and pure. A frightened child had found courage, a patient dog had offered compassion, and in that connection, something beautiful had been born. The world had watched, had been moved, and had remembered what goodness looked like. And somewhere in Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania, a 3-year-old girl slept peacefully, dreaming not of scary dogs, but of her friend Rex, while a German shepherd rested in his handler's home, unaware that he'd just become one of the most beloved dogs in America. 3 years had passed since that sweltering July afternoon, and the world looked remarkably different for everyone involved. Emma Rodriguez, now 6 years old and missing her 2 front teeth, stood confidently at the podium in Meadowbrook Elementary School's auditorium, her small voice amplified by the microphone as she addressed an assembly of 200 children, parents, and teachers. Beside her, sitting in perfect formation but with those same gentle eyes that had captivated the world, was Rex. The German shepherd was 8 years old now, graying slightly around his muzzle, but his presence remained as powerful and dignified as ever. Officer Marcus Chen stood nearby, his chest swelling with pride as he watched Emma, no longer terrified, no longer trembling, speak to the crowd about courage and facing fears. "When I was 3, I was really scared of dogs," Emma said, her lisp caused by her missing teeth making her even more endearing to the audience. "I thought all dogs were scary and mean, but then I met Rex. He showed me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you try even when you are scared." The journey to this moment had been extraordinary. In the weeks following the viral video, Sophia had brought Emma to visit Rex at the police station every Saturday morning. What started as brief 15-minute sessions had gradually extended to hour-long visits. Emma would bring Rex treats, brush his fur, play fetch with him in the station's training yard, and slowly, steadily, Her relationship with dogs had transformed from terror to trust, and eventually to genuine love. Dr. Torres had documented the progress meticulously, amazed at how rapidly Emma's recovery had accelerated after that initial breakthrough. Rex provided something that months of traditional therapy couldn't, she'd written in her clinical notes. He offered patient, non-judgmental presence and allowed Emma to set the pace entirely. His intuition was, quite frankly, extraordinary. But Emma wasn't the only child whose life had been changed. Within 3 months of the video going viral, Marcus and Rex had been approached by the county school board with a proposition. Would they be willing to develop a program specifically designed to help children overcome their fear of dogs? The program would use Rex's natural gentleness and Marcus's understanding of both canine behavior and child psychology to create therapeutic encounters. Thus, Courage Paws was born. The program, which officially launched in September 3 years ago, had since helped over 300 children in Pennsylvania overcome their fear of dogs. Rex, while still maintaining his police duties on a part-time basis, had become a certified therapy dog, an almost unheard-of dual certification for a working police canine. The program had been so successful that it had been replicated in 17 other states, with police departments across the country training select canine officers to work with traumatized children. Marcus had been promoted to sergeant and now oversaw the canine unit's community outreach programs. He'd written a training manual titled Beyond the Badge, Discovering Your Canine's Therapeutic Potential, which had become required reading at several police academies. He'd been invited to speak at conferences, had consulted with therapy dog organizations, and had helped establish protocols for identifying which canine officers might possess the temperament for therapeutic work. But more than any professional achievement, what filled Marcus with joy was watching transformations like Emma's happen over and over again. There was 7-year-old Miguel, who'd been bitten by a stray dog and hadn't been able to walk to school alone because of his fear. After 6 sessions with Rex, Miguel had adopted a rescue puppy of his own. There was 9-year-old Aisha, whose nightmares about dogs had been disrupting her entire family's sleep for 2 years. After meeting Rex, the nightmares had gradually faded, replaced by dreams of becoming a veterinarian. The program had evolved beyond just fear therapy. Schools invited Rex for anti-bullying presentations, where his story with Emma was used to teach empathy and patience. Nursing homes requested visits, where Rex's calm presence brought comfort to elderly residents. The local children's hospital had Rex certified as a visiting therapy dog, where he brought joy to young patients facing scary medical procedures. Sophia had become a volunteer coordinator for Courage Paws, helping other parents navigate their children's fears and connecting families with resources. She'd watched her daughter blossom from a fearful, anxious child into a confident, compassionate young girl who genuinely wanted to help other scared kids. Emma had become a junior ambassador for the program, often accompanying Marcus and Rex to introductory sessions, sharing her story and showing other frightened children that change was possible. Now at the school assembly, Emma was telling that story once again, but with the wisdom of a child who'd lived through transformation. "Rex waited for me," she said, her eyes finding the German shepherd's gentle gaze. "He didn't force me. He just showed me that I could trust him. And now I want to help animals like he helped me. When I grow up, I'm going to be a veterinarian and I'm going to help scared animals feel safe, just like Rex helped me." The auditorium erupted in applause. Parents dabbed at their eyes. Teachers smiled with pride. And Marcus, standing beside his remarkable partner, felt a lump form in his throat for what must have been the 1,000th time since that July afternoon 3 years ago. After the assembly, as children lined up to carefully pet Rex under Marcus's supervision, Emma stood beside them, encouraging nervous kids, sharing her experience, being the voice of hope for others still trapped in fear. One little boy, probably about 4 years old, hung back with his mother, clearly terrified. Emma noticed and walked over to him. "It's okay to be scared," she told him gently, channeling the same patience Rex had shown her. "I was scared too, but Rex is really, really nice. You don't have to pet him today if you don't want to. He'll wait for you. He's good at waiting." The boy looked at Emma, then at Rex, then back at Emma. Something in her confidence, in her understanding, seemed to reach him. He took one small step forward. Marcus watched this new beginning unfold, knowing that the ripple effects of that single moment 3 years ago were still spreading outward, still touching lives, still creating connections. Rex, the intimidating police dog who'd somehow known exactly what a frightened little girl needed, had sparked a movement of compassion that continued to grow. As the sun streamed through the auditorium windows, illuminating the scene of children learning courage and dogs offering patience, Marcus understood something profound. Rex hadn't just helped Emma that day. He'd reminded an entire community, an entire nation, that healing often comes from unexpected places, that intuition and empathy can bridge seemingly impossible divides, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply wait for someone to be ready. And in Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania, in schools and homes across 17 states, and in the hearts of hundreds of children who'd found courage through Courage Pause, Rex's legacy lived on. One patient moment, one gentle connection, one transformed life at a time.